We now move on to the defense of necessity. And the first case that we're going to look at whenever we talk about necessity is the case of Crown against Dudley and Stevens. The facts of this case are very interesting, right? Dudley, Stevens, another person, Brooks, as well as the cabin boy, Parker, they departed on this yacht, right? Looks like quite a small yacht, right? And they were actually traveling from Sydney all the way to Southampton in such a small yacht like this. Okay, after coming to somewhere in Africa, like the Cape of Good Hope, Tanjung Pengharapan, there, after passing it, they came across a gale, right? Strong wind, and then a strong wave hit the yacht, and basically the yacht started to sink. So they all got out of the yacht, all four of them, and they got into this little boat, right? They got into this little boat. They were in a rush that they did not manage to bring any water with them, or nor did they bring any food except for 2 cans of turnips, apparently. Okay, so this took place on the 5th of July, and after around 3 weeks or so, they were out of food, they were starving, and what Dudley and Stevens decided to do was that they decided to kill the cabin boy, the 17-year-old Parker, and to eat him and as well as to drink his blood. Right? Brooks initially didn't want to have any part to do with it, so Brooks was not charged. However, after Dudley and Stevens killed Parker, Brooks joined in and also ate some parts of the boy. Right? So they were eventually rescued 4 days later, right? They were eventually rescued, and when they were brought back to the UK, they were charged. Dudley and Stevens were charged for murder, right? They were charged for murder, and they tried to raise the defense of necessity. They said that it was necessary for them to do so because if they didn't do that, they would die. So in order to prevent themselves from dying, they had to kill the cabin boy, who they claim was actually in a coma at the time because he was very sick. He fell sick, and he was in a coma and he was dying. So he probably would not have survived much longer also. But they decided to kill him because apparently they wanted to also drink his blood. They didn't want to drink the sea water. Now the court actually rejected their defense, right? Rejected their defense and found them guilty. They were eventually pardoned. But they were actually found guilty by the courts. Excuse me. And Dudley and Stevens, well, there are three ways of how you can look at it. Right? Three ways of how you can look at it. The first way is that there is no such thing as defense of necessity in the English criminal law. Right? No defense of necessity in English criminal law. The London Borough of Southwark and Williams, this is what Lord Denning said. Necessity would open a door which no man could shut. Well, you could ask a woman to do it. But anyway, Lord Denning said that it will not only be those in extreme need who would enter. Basically, Lord Denning was worried and concerned about this floodgates argument. You want to open this door and then more and more people will go in. So therefore, there's no necessity of under English criminal law. The second way to look at it is that there is defense of necessity. However, it is not applicable to murder. Right? Defense of necessity is not applicable to murder. In the case of Crown against Howe, Lord Hilsham held that duress. This was in reference to the defense of duress, which we will look at later. Duress is only that species of the genus of necessity which is caused by wrongful threats. I cannot see that there is any way in which a person of ordinary fortitude can be excused from the one type of pressure on his will rather than the other. Right? So, although there may be a defense of necessity, it is not applicable for murder. The third way to look at Dudley and Stevens was that necessity is not a defense to murder if there was an element of selection of the victim. Right? If there was an element of selection of the victim. In this case, why is it that the boy was chosen? Is it because his life was less important? Just because he's dying showed that means that he's got the less right to live, right? So in this case, there was an element of selection of victim because they could have killed any one of them. Why did they have to choose the boy? Now you compare that with this situation, right? We've seen this in movies before, right? If people are climbing up and then they are going to fall off, and the person below is saying that cut the rope and let me go so that you can pull yourself up because you can't pull both of us up together, right? So in this case, if the person cuts the rope and pulls himself up, can he actually use the defense of necessity, right? Because he did an act which caused the death, and he did so under of the intention with the intention to kill the other person. But how different is this situation from Dudley and Stevens? Now the difference is that this person's life is being threatened by the person whom he is going to kill, right? So there's no element of selection here. There's no element of selection. Unlike Dudley and Stevens, in Dudley and Stevens, they were starving and they were dying, but it was not because of the boy. Right? It was not because of the boy. The boy was not causing or was not endangering them. So therefore, that's one way to look at it. And there was an element of selection, and they chose the poor boy. However, after Dudley and Stevens, we see that English law does recognize the defense of necessity. Now, Parliament itself recognizes it in the case of in the Infant Life Preservation Act 1929, Section 1, subsection 1 provides that if you actually end the life of a fetus, you will be charged for an offense. However, right? However, if you end the life of the fetus in order to protect the mother, right? So it was done in good faith in order to protect the mother, then it will not be an offense. So out of necessity, in order to protect the mother, you can actually end the life of the fetus. So that's one statutory provision. The other statutory provision is the more common one, Road Traffic Regulation Act 1984, which basically says that in times of emergency, ambulance, fire brigade, and the police, right, they are exempted from the speed limit. Okay, they're exempted from the speed limit, and let me tell you that they can go really fast. Right, I remember when I was in the UK as a student, I was about to cross the road. It was a pedestrian crossing, right? So when you go on pedestrian crossing in the UK, cars will actually stop for you. Uh, so I was going to step out on there when a friend actually helped me back, and I was like, "What's up? It's a pedestrian crossing. Cars will have to stop." And the next moment, a police car just zoomed past by. Okay, so the police car was not following the speed limit. It also did not stop at the pedestrian crossing because it was attending to an emergency. Okay, so out of necessity, they are allowed to break the law. And case law also recognizes that necessity can be used as a defense in very limited circumstances. In this case of Re F, it actually the victim here was a girl who was mentally handicapped, right? And what happened was that she was in an institution, mental institution. So she actually met somebody, right, a boy, and they began to have romantic feelings for each other, and they started a relationship. Now the doctors were very concerned for her because they felt that if she was going to get pregnant, if she were to get pregnant, right, her mental condition will not be able to handle it, right? Her mental condition will not be able to handle it if she got pregnant. So what they did was that they actually sterilized her, right? They actually sterilized her so that if she does have sexual intercourse with the person that she has fallen in love with, there's no risk of her getting pregnant. So it was out of necessity because they were very sure that if she got pregnant, she would not be able to handle it. But you compare that with this case, St. George's Healthcare Trust and S, right? In this case, was pregnant. It was a pregnant woman also, but not she was not mentally handicapped in any or handicapped in any way. She wanted to have a natural childbirth, right? She wanted to have a natural childbirth. But when the doctors checked her, they said that no, the natural childbirth would be too dangerous for her. So they recommended that she go for a cesarean, a C-section, right, where they will actually uh, cut the child out instead of going by natural childbirth. But the woman insisted to have natural childbirth and she refused to give her consent. However, the doctors went ahead and conducted the cesarean, the C-section, and the baby was healthy and the mother was also healthy. However, the mother was very unhappy about it and basically brought the St. George's Healthcare Trust, the hospital, to the court, right? And the doctors basically said that, look, we did it out of necessity, right? She was not, it was too dangerous for her to have natural childbirth, okay? But the court in this case came to a different conclusion from REF, right? REF was a case where the doctors had to make the decision for that patient. However, in the serious REF, however, in the case of S, the woman was an adult and the woman had every right to make a decision for herself and every right to take the risk for herself if she wanted to. So the doctors had no right to forcefully cut her out to take the baby out in order to protect her. Right? So necessity does not work in that way when she has the choice. And finally, the case of necessity, the classic case of necessity is also the case of RE-A. RE-A is regarding conjoined twins, Jody and Mary. Now, unfortunately for Mary, she does not have organs which are functioning. So she is basically living off Jody, right? So Jody is breathing for both of them, and then Jody's vital organs are actually like the heart is pumping blood for both of them, right? Because Mary's vital organs are not working at all. So they are fine now, but eventually Jody will die, right? Because her organs are not able to carry out, well, are not able to cater for both of them on a long-term basis, right? And when Jody dies, Mary will also die. Okay, so the doctors had to make a very difficult decision. They decided to separate the twins, and they know for a fact that if they separate the twins, Mary will definitely die, but Jody will get to survive. So the matter was, they brought the matter up to the court and basically asking whether if they actually separate the twins in order to save Jody, will they be charged for killing Mary? Right? It would be murder because it was an act and they know virtually certain that Mary is going to die if they carry out that act. So all the elements of murder would be satisfied. Now the court in this case basically said that yes, it would be murder, but the court said that you can actually rely on the defenses. However, like Lord Justice Ward says that this is a very unique circumstances, right? Very unique. It's a very unique circumstance where right it's impossible to preserve the life of Jody without bringing about the death of Mary. Okay, for all intents and purposes, Mary actually is basically killing Jody, and then when that happens, then Mary will also die. And Mary is actually slowly killing off Jody, right? Jody is capable of living independently from Mary, but Mary is incapable of living independently. So they took great pains to point out how unique and how special the circumstances is. And Lord Justice Brooke basically said that the doctors, while while they would have actually satisfied the elements of murder, they would have the defense of necessity. and he talked about three circumstances, right? Three circumstances on when defense of necessity can be used. First is that the act is needed to avoid inevitable and irreparable evil. Secondly, no more should be done than is reasonably necessary for the purpose to be achieved. And thirdly, the evil inflicted must not be disproportionate to the evil avoided. Right? Now, this is basically Lord Justice Brooks' view. Okay, I personally do not agree with this, and I do not like his reasoning. It seems to imply that there is such thing as a necessary evil. Okay, I think that at the end of the day, what is done is not evil. What is done cannot be said to be evil, right? What is done was actually something which was, well, according to Lord Justice Ward, right? Lord Justice Brooks said that it was necessity. If you actually read the case, Lord Justice Ward went more on self-defense, well, not so much self-defense, but public defense, in the sense that Mary was killing Jody, and therefore, in order to protect Jody, we would have to separate them, right? In order to protect Jody, we have to separate the twins, which will result in Mary dying. So therefore, I feel that this is more of a situation of a public defense and the defending Jody in order to justify the acts of the doctors. But yeah, so there were different views, but at the end of the day, the court of appeal was agreeable that there was a valid defense, right? There was a valid defense in this situation. So let's just recap, right? Defense of necessity is quite short, right? We all started off with Dudley and Stevens, but there are three ways to look at it. Whether there's no such defense of necessity, which we know now that there is a defense of necessity. So perhaps the other two ways to look at Dudley and Stevens is that it does not apply to murder. And that also we see on the case of Re A, it shows that yes, it does apply to murder also. So perhaps for Dudley and Stevens, the way to look at it is that uh, necessity cannot be a defense to murder when there's an element of selection. Okay, not like Re A, where there was no element of selection. Basically, it was Mary who's the one who was causing Jody to die. Then we look at statutes, which actually have dealt with, have allowed situations where certain acts can be done out of necessity. And then case law, the case of Re F, the case of S, as well as the case of Re A. Now you will see that there is an overlap with duress. There can be an overlap with duress, although duress is an excuse, right? There's a question of whether does it actually overlap with the duress of circumstances or not. That sometimes it is necessary for you to do an act. So in order to see that, we will be dealing with duress next.